My entitled daughter threw a tantrum over her new convertible. My wife backed her up and blamed me, and they treated me like garbage for trying to set boundaries with them. So I packed my bags and taught them both what real loss feels like. When my daughter Chloe was a teenager, I was desperate to buy her love. It's what my own dad did with me, so I always thought that's just how you showed your kid you loved them. But looking back now, I was turning her entitled and spoiled. It started small. A new phone here, designer heels there, nothing too crazy. My wife Vanessa used to be my partner in all this. She supported me spoiling Chloe, but somewhere along the way, she switched sides. They would team up on me about things like paying for a new trip with her friends or a doubled weekly allowance. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten until Chloe's 16th birthday. Vanessa and I spent weeks planning it. We bought her a brand new red convertible, the kind of car most kids would dream about. We kept it hidden at my brother's place and even bought a big gold bow to stick on the hood. I thought she was going to cry when she saw it. Instead, the second we walked her outside and she realized it wasn't my car sitting in the driveway, her whole face dropped. She didn't even try to hide it. She crossed her arms and said loud enough for all the neighbors to hear, "This is so basic. I said I wanted Dad's car." The red convertible just sat there in the driveway, gleaming in the sun, while Chloe stormed back inside. I remember feeling this pit open up in my stomach. I didn't even know what to say. I looked at Vanessa, expecting her to help me talk some sense into her, but instead, she just gave me this tired look, like I was the one being unreasonable, and followed Chloe into the house. That night, Vanessa cornered me in the kitchen. Her arms were crossed, and she had that look like she was dealing with a stubborn child. She told me I needed to stop being selfish, that it was just a car and I could easily replace it. She said, "Why do you always have to make things difficult? She's your daughter. You should want her to be happy." I tried to explain that my car wasn't just some thing to me. It was the first major thing I ever bought after working my butt off through college. It meant something. Vanessa just rolled her eyes and said, maybe if I really loved Chloe, I would show it. Then she walked away. The next week was hell. Chloe barely spoke to me unless it was to ask for something. Vanessa was cold too, like I had personally betrayed them both. The red convertible sat untouched in the driveway like this giant reminder that no matter how much I gave them, it was never going to be enough. I spent more time at work, just to avoid going home. My buddy Greg noticed something was off and pulled me aside one day. I told him the short version, and he just shook his head and said, "Man, what lesson are you teaching her if you give in?" That hit me harder than anything anyone had said. The final straw came a few days later. I came home late after a long meeting. I walked through the front door and immediately knew something was wrong. My sedan was not parked straight in the driveway like it always was. It was crooked and way closer to the bushes. My heart started pounding before I even got close. When I did, I saw it. A long, ugly scratch down the side of the passenger door. I rushed inside and found Chloe sitting on the couch like nothing had happened. I asked her what happened. She didn't even flinch. She just shrugged and said, "Well, if you weren't being such a jerk about it, I wouldn't have had to take it myself." I was so stunned I could barely get the words out. I looked at Vanessa thinking she would at least be upset about the damage, but she just defended Chloe. She said, "It's just a stupid car. Why do you care more about that than the fact your daughter ended up okay?" I swear something inside me just snapped. My hands were shaking. My chest hurt. I told them both to sit down because we were going to have a real conversation whether they wanted to or not. I told them about what that car meant to me, and when I did, Chloe looked away like she couldn't meet my eyes. Vanessa just stood there frozen like she had finally realized what she had become part of. I told them that somewhere along the way, we had lost what mattered, that Chloe had turned into someone who measured love in gifts instead of moments, and it was our fault for letting it happen. I said I needed time to figure out if we could ever fix it. I packed a bag and told them I was going to stay with my mother for a while. Before I left, I walked over to Chloe. I handed her the keys to the red convertible and I said, "You have two choices. You can appreciate what you have, or you can keep chasing what you don't. Only one of those will make you happy." Then I walked out. The drive to my mom's place was a blur. I kept replaying the events of the last few hours, days, years in my head. How had we gotten here? When exactly had I lost control of my family? Was it the first smartphone? The first time I gave in to a tantrum? Or was it even earlier, when I decided that being a good father meant compensating for my own dad's emotional distance with material things? My mom was surprised to see me, but she didn't ask too many questions when she saw my face. She just made up the guest room and told me I could stay as long as I needed. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd done the right thing by walking out. What if this just made everything worse? What if Chloe saw this as another reason to resent me? What if Vanessa decided this was the final straw for our marriage? I must have fallen asleep eventually because I woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon. My mom was in the kitchen making breakfast like it was any other day. She set a plate in front of me without comment, then sat down across from me with her own. "So," she said after a few minutes of silence, "want to tell me what happened?" I gave her the condensed version, leaving out some of the uglier details. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "Your father would have just given her the car," she said. That hit me like a punch to the gut. "Is that what you think I should have done?" She shook her head. "Number, I think you're finally breaking the cycle. It's about time." I spent the next few days going through the motions. I went to work, came back to my mom's, ate dinner, went to bed, rinse and repeat. Vanessa texted a few times, but it was all practical stuff. Bills that needed paying, mail that had arrived. Nothing about us or Chloe or when I was coming home. On the fourth day, Michael invited me out for drinks after work. We ended up at this dive bar a few blocks from the office. The kind of place with peanut shells on the floor and sports memorabilia covering every inch of wall space. "How's the situation at home?" he asked after we'd ordered our beers. I shrugged. "I wouldn't know. I'm staying at my mom's." Michael's eyebrows shot up. "Seriously? You moved out?" "Just temporarily," I said, though I wasn't sure if that was true. I needed some space to think. "And what have you been thinking?" I took a long sip of my beer. "That I've been a complete idiot for years. That I've turned my daughter into someone I don't recognize. That my wife and I are basically strangers at this point." Michael nodded. "That's a good start. Recognizing the problem is half the battle. What's the other half?" "Fixing it," he said simply. "And that's the hard part." He was right, of course. Identifying where I'd gone wrong was one thing. Figuring out how to make it right was something else entirely. I couldn't just snap my fingers and undo years of bad parenting. I couldn't expect Chloe to suddenly become grateful and grounded after a lifetime of excess. And I couldn't blame Vanessa for the role she'd played without acknowledging my own. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Vanessa. "We need to talk. Can you come by the house tonight?" My stomach clenched. Was this it? Was she going to ask for a divorce? Had she and Chloe decided they were better off without me? I texted back a simple yes and spent the rest of the day in a fog of anxiety. When I pulled into the driveway that evening, I noticed two things immediately. First, my sedan was gone. Second, so was the red convertible. In their place was Vanessa's practical SUV. I walked up to the front door with a sense of dread, wondering what other changes I'd find inside. Vanessa answered on the first knock. She looked different somehow. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wasn't wearing any makeup. She stepped aside to let me in without a word. The house was quiet, too quiet. "Where's Chloe?" I asked. "At Madison's," Vanessa said. "I thought we should talk alone first." She led me to the kitchen table where 2 cups of coffee were already waiting. We sat across from each other like strangers on a first date, both unsure how to begin. "I sold the convertible," she said finally, "and I used the money to fix your car. It's at the shop now. Should be ready tomorrow." I blinked in surprise. "You sold it? Just like that?" She nodded. "You were right. About all of it. We've been terrible parents. I hadn't expected this. I'd prepared myself for anger, for blame, for a fight, not for agreement." "We?" "Yes, we," she said firmly. "I've been just as bad as you. Worse, maybe, because I saw what was happening and didn't stop it. I enabled it." I took a sip of my coffee to buy myself time to process this. "What changed?" Vanessa looked down at her hands. "After you left, Chloe and I had a big fight. She wanted me to call you and convince you to come back and apologize. When I refused, she stormed out and stayed at Madison's for 2 days. Jesus," I muttered. "Yeah, and while she was gone, I had a lot of time to think. About us, about her, about how we got here." She looked up at me, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm sorry, James. I'm so sorry for everything." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Me too." We talked for hours that night. Really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. About our marriage, our parenting, our fears and hopes for Chloe. We agreed that things needed to change dramatically, but we also acknowledged that it wouldn't be easy. Chloe wouldn't suddenly transform into a grateful, well-adjusted teenager overnight. We had years of damage to undo. "So what's the plan?" I asked as the conversation wound down. Vanessa squeezed my hand. "First, you come home. We need to present a united front. Then we set some ground rules for Chloe. Real consequences, real responsibilities." I nodded. "And what about us? We work on us too," she said. "Maybe some counseling. We've both lost sight of what matters." I moved back in that night. We agreed to talk to Chloe together the next day. I was nervous about it, expecting another blow-up, another round of accusations and tears, but I also felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Chloe came home from Madison's the next afternoon. She walked through the door and froze when she saw me sitting at the kitchen table with Vanessa. Her eyes darted between us, clearly trying to read the situation. "Sit down, Chloe," Vanessa said. "We need to talk." Chloe slumped into a chair, already on the defensive. "If this is about the car, Mom already told me she sold it." "It's about more than the car," I said. "It's about our family and how we've been living." We laid it all out for her. The new rules, the expectations, the consequences. No more excessive gifts, no more unlimited spending. She would get a part-time job to pay for extras. She would contribute to household chores. She would show respect to both of us. "This is so unfair," she said, but there was less conviction in her voice than I expected. "Life isn't fair," I told her. "The sooner you learn that, the better off you'll be." She looked at Vanessa, clearly hoping for an ally, but Vanessa just nodded in agreement with me. "Your father and I are on the same page about this, Chloe. Things are going to be different from now on." Chloe crossed her arms and glared at us both. "Fine, whatever. Can I go now?" We let her go, knowing this was just the beginning of what would likely be a long and difficult process. As soon as she was out of earshot, Vanessa turned to me with a worried expression. "Do you think this will work?" I shrugged. "I don't know, but we have to try." The next few weeks were rough, to put it mildly. Chloe tested every boundary we set. She forgot to do her chores. She came home late. She complained constantly about how unfair we were being and how none of her friends had parents like us, but we held firm. When she missed curfew, she lost her phone for a day. When she skipped chores, she lost TV privileges. It was exhausting, and there were moments when I was tempted to give in just for some peace. But every time I felt myself weakening, I remembered the scratch on my car and what it represented. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to change. Chloe stopped fighting us on every little thing. She started doing her chores without being reminded. She even applied for a job at the local ice cream shop without us having to nag her about it. One evening, about a month after our big confrontation, I came home from work to find Chloe in the kitchen making dinner, not just heating up leftovers, but actually cooking, chicken, vegetables, the works. I stood in the doorway watching her for a moment, not quite believing what I was seeing. Need any help? I asked. She jumped slightly, not having heard me come in. Oh, you could set the table, I guess. I grabbed plates and silverware and started setting the table. We worked in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the sizzle of chicken in the pan and the clinking of dishes. I got the job, she said suddenly. At Sweet Scoops. I start next weekend. That's great, I said, genuinely pleased. Congratulations, she nodded, focusing intently on stirring the vegetables. It doesn't pay much, but it's a start. Every job teaches you something, I told her. My first job was washing dishes at a diner. Hardest work I've ever done, but I learned a lot about responsibility. She glanced at me with what might have been the ghost of a smile. Yeah, well, I doubt scooping ice cream is going to be that deep, but whatever. It wasn't a heartfelt father-daughter moment by any means, but it felt like progress. A small crack in the wall she'd built between us. Vanessa came home a little later, and her surprise at finding dinner ready was evident. The three of us sat down to eat together, something that had become rare in our household. The conversation was stilted at first, but as the meal progressed, it began to flow more naturally. Chloe even laughed at one point. A genuine laugh, not the sarcastic one she'd been using with us lately. After dinner, Chloe went upstairs to do homework, leaving Vanessa and me to clean up. As we stood side by side at the sink, Vanessa nudged me with her elbow. That was nice, she said. Almost like a normal family dinner. I smiled. Almost. Do you think we're making progress? I thought about it for a moment. I think so. Small steps, but in the right direction. The real test came a few weeks later when Chloe's birthday rolled around again. Her 17th. We'd discussed it extensively, Vanessa and I, trying to find the right balance. We wanted to acknowledge her birthday, to make it special, but without falling back into old patterns. We settled on a small family dinner at her favorite restaurant, followed by a modest gift, a leather-bound journal and a nice pen. No car, no expensive electronics, no extravagant gestures, just a thoughtful present and quality time together. I was nervous as we sat at the restaurant, waiting for the waiter to bring out the small cake we'd ordered for dessert. Chloe had been in a good mood throughout dinner, chatting about her job and school, but I couldn't help wondering if she was expecting something more, if she'd be disappointed when no big surprise materialized. The waiter set the cake in front of her, a single candle flickering in the center. Make a wish, Vanessa said. Chloe closed her eyes for a moment, then blew out the candle. We clapped, and I slid the small wrapped package across the table to her. Happy birthday, sweetheart, I said. She unwrapped it slowly, carefully, so different from the way she used to tear into presents. When she saw the journal and pen, she ran her fingers over the soft leather cover, a thoughtful expression on her face. It's beautiful, she said. Thank you. I waited for the but, the comparison to what her friends got, the hint that she'd expected more. It didn't come. Instead, she looked up at us with clear eyes. I've been thinking about what I want to do after high school, she said. I think I might want to study journalism. Vanessa and I exchanged surprised glances. This was the first we'd heard of any career aspirations from Chloe. Previously, her future plans had been vague at best, centered mostly around travel and shopping. That's great, I said. Any particular reason? She shrugged, still running her fingers over the journal. I like writing, and I'm good at asking questions, figuring things out. A small smile played at her lips. Plus, Madison's dad is a journalist. He took us to his office last week. It seemed cool. I felt a twinge of the old jealousy at the mention of Madison's dad, but I pushed it aside. This wasn't about competition. This was about Chloe finding her own path. Well, I think you'd be great at it, I said sincerely. The rest of the evening passed pleasantly. As we drove home, Chloe in the back seat, I caught Vanessa's eye and saw my own cautious optimism reflected there. It wasn't a complete transformation. Chloe still had her moments of attitude and entitlement, but something fundamental had shifted. When we got home, Chloe surprised us both by giving us each a quick hug before heading upstairs. As soon as she was gone, Vanessa turned to me with wide eyes. Did that just happen? She whispered. I nodded, equally stunned. I think our daughter just hugged us voluntarily. We laughed, the sound filling our kitchen with a warmth that had been missing for too long. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Real, tangible progress. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter next to the coffee pot. In Chloe's handwriting, it simply said, "Thanks for dinner, and for not giving up on me." I stood there for a long time, just staring at those words. They weren't an apology for years of entitled behavior. They weren't a promise to be perfect from now on, but they were an acknowledgement, a recognition that something had been wrong and was now, slowly, being made right. I folded the note and put it in my wallet, a small token of hope to carry with me. The road ahead would still be challenging. We had years of bad habits to overcome, trust to rebuild, relationships to repair, but for the first time in a long time, I believed we could do it, together, as a family. That evening, when I came home from work, I found Chloe sitting on the front steps of our house, waiting for me. She stood up as I approached, shifting awkwardly from foot to foot. "Hey," I said, surprised to see her there. "Everything okay?" She nodded, then took a deep breath like she was preparing herself for something difficult. "I wanted to show you something." She led me around to the side of the house where my sedan was parked. The scratch had been repaired professionally, the paint job seamless, but that wasn't what she wanted me to see. On the passenger seat was a small potted plant with a card attached. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it," she said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. I opened the car door and picked up the card. Inside, in Chloe's handwriting it said, "I'm sorry for the scratch, and for everything else. I'm trying to be better." I looked up at her, standing there with her arms crossed protectively over her chest, looking younger and more vulnerable than she had in years. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "This means a lot." She shrugged, trying to play it cool, but I could see the relief in her eyes. "It's just a plant." "It's not just a plant," I said, "and you know it." She looked down at her feet, then back up at me. "Do you think, maybe this weekend we could go for a drive? You could show me how to change the oil like you used to talk about." I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot of tension I hadn't even realized was there. "I'd like that," I said. "I'd like that a lot." As we walked back to the house together, not touching but closer than we'd been in years, I thought about the journey we'd been on, the mistakes, the pain, the slow path to healing. It wasn't over yet. We still had work to do, all of us. But for the first time, I felt like we were all walking in the same direction. That night, as Vanessa and I got ready for bed, I told her about the plant and the note, about Chloe's request to learn about car maintenance. "It's a start," Vanessa said, leaning her head against my shoulder. "A real start." I put my arm around her, pulling her close. "Yes," I agreed, "it is." And in that moment, I realized something profound. The journey to rebuild our family wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. It was about these small moments of connection, the shared meals, the honest conversations, the tentative steps toward understanding. Each one a tiny bridge spanning the gulf that had grown between us over the years. The next weekend, Chloe and I spent Saturday morning in the driveway, me showing her how to check the oil, change a tire, and perform basic maintenance on the car. She listened attentively, asked questions, and even laughed when I got grease on my face. It reminded me of when she was little, when she used to follow me around the house, eager to learn whatever I was doing, before the phones and the shopping malls and the endless pursuit of more. As we worked together under the hood of my sedan, I caught glimpses of the daughter I'd almost lost, curious, engaged, present, and I caught glimpses of the father I wanted to be, patient, knowledgeable, there, really there, not just physically, but emotionally. It wasn't perfect. We still had our moments of tension and misunderstanding, but we were trying, all three of us, and for now, that was enough. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the car maintenance session with Chloe. It felt like we'd finally broken through some invisible barrier, not completely, but enough to see each other again. I mentioned it to Vanessa as we got ready for bed. "It's weird," I said, pulling on my pajama pants. "For a couple hours today, it almost felt like I had my daughter back." Vanessa smiled. "I noticed. She actually talked about it at dinner while you were taking that work call. Said you didn't treat her like an idiot even when she couldn't figure out how to use the jack." "Really?" I felt a warm feeling spread through my chest. "She said that?" "Yep. Don't make a big deal about it though. You know how she gets when we point out she's being nice." I laughed. "Yeah, I know." Over the next few weeks, things kept improving in small ways. Chloe started working more shifts at Sweet Scoops, and I noticed she wasn't asking for money as often. One night I drove by the ice cream shop on my way home from a late meeting and saw her through the window, laughing with customers, looking genuinely happy. I almost went in but decided against it. Better to give her space to be her own person. At home, the atmosphere was different too. Less tension, more actual conversations. Vanessa and I started having date nights again. Nothing fancy, just dinner or a movie, but it felt good to reconnect. We talked about things other than Chloe or bills or house repairs. I remembered why I'd fallen for her in the first place. About a month after our driveway car lesson, I came home to find Chloe sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by college brochures. She looked up when I walked in, almost embarrassed. "Mom picked these up from the guidance counselor," she explained quickly. "I'm just looking." I tried to act casual. "Find anything interesting?" She shrugged. "Maybe. This one has a good journalism program." She pushed a brochure toward me. "State University. About 2 hours away. Not too expensive. Decent reputation. Want me to take a look with you?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, okay." I sat down next to her, and we went through the brochures together. She had questions about financial aid, dorms, class sizes, practical stuff I hadn't expected her to think about. I answered what I could, and admitted when I didn't know. "We should probably visit some of these places," I suggested. "Get a feel for the campuses." "That would be cool," she said, then added quickly, "If you guys have time, we'll make time," I promised. Later that week, I mentioned the college brochures to Michael during our lunch break. He seemed impressed. "Sounds like things are really turning around," he said, unwrapping his sandwich. "Slowly," I agreed. "There are still rough patches. Yesterday she got mad because we wouldn't let her go to some concert 3 hours away on a school night." Michael laughed. "That's just normal teenage stuff though, not entitled princess stuff." He was right. The battles we were having now were typical parent-teen conflicts, not the extreme behavior from before. It was actually kind of refreshing to argue about normal things like curfews, instead of why we wouldn't buy her a third pair of $300 shoes that month. The real test came when Madison's birthday rolled around. Madison's parents were throwing her this elaborate party at some fancy restaurant downtown. In the past, Chloe would have demanded an expensive gift to bring, plus a new outfit for herself. This time, she just asked for a ride and some money for a present. "How much were you thinking?" I asked, bracing myself. "Maybe $40? We're all chipping in to get her concert tickets." I tried not to look too shocked. That sounds reasonable. The night of the party, I drove her downtown. As we pulled up to the restaurant, I noticed her fidgeting with her purse. Everything okay? I asked. She nodded, then hesitated. It's just, Madison's parents got her a car. Like, a really nice one. My stomach tightened. Here it comes, I thought. And? I prompted when she didn't continue. She shrugged. Nothing. It's cool for her. I don't know. It feels weird now. Like, I get why we're doing things differently. I was so surprised I didn't know what to say. Chloe took my silence as disapproval. Sorry, forget I said anything, she mumbled, reaching for the door handle. No, wait, I said. I'm glad you told me, and I'm proud of you for understanding. She rolled her eyes, but I caught the small smile she tried to hide. Whatever, I'll text when I need a ride home. I watched her walk into the restaurant, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite sort out. Pride, definitely, relief, and something else, a kind of cautious optimism I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. When I got home, I told Vanessa about the conversation. She looked as surprised as I felt. Wow, she said. That's progress. Big progress, I agreed. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. Vanessa sat next to me on the couch. Maybe it won't. Maybe this is real change. I hope so. The next big milestone came when Chloe got her first paycheck from Sweet Scoops. She came home waving the envelope like she'd won the lottery. Look, she said, pulling out the check. It wasn't much, maybe $200 for 2 weeks of part-time work, but you'd think it was $1 million from her reaction. Nice job, I said. What are you going to do with it? She thought for a moment. I need to save some for college, but maybe I could use a little to get my nails done with Madison this weekend. Sounds like a plan, I said, trying not to make too big a deal out of the fact that she'd mentioned saving for college without prompting. After she went upstairs, Vanessa turned to me with wide eyes. Did our daughter just talk about saving money? Voluntarily? I laughed. I think she did. Should we check for pod people in the basement? Very funny. But seriously, James, I never thought we'd get here. Me neither, I admitted. But I'm glad we did. Summer came, and with it, more changes. Chloe got promoted at Sweet Scoops to shift supervisor. She started talking about wanting to visit some colleges before senior year started. And one weekend, completely unprompted, she cleaned out her closet and donated 3 bags of clothes to Goodwill. I don't even wear half this stuff, she explained when I helped her load the bags into the car, and some of it still has tags. It's stupid to just let it sit there. I nodded, remembering all the shopping trips, all the times I'd handed over my credit card without question. That's really thoughtful, Chloe. She shrugged like it was no big deal, but I could tell she was pleased by the compliment. On the drive to Goodwill, she was quiet, looking out the window. Then suddenly she said, I'm sorry about your car, the scratch and everything. I glanced at her surprised. We hadn't talked about that incident in months. Thank you, but you already apologized, remember? The plant? Yeah, but she fidgeted with her seatbelt. I never really said why I did it. I was just so mad that you weren't giving me what I wanted. I'd never had to deal with that before. I took a deep breath. I know, and that's on me and your mom. We didn't set good boundaries. Still, it was a crappy thing to do. It was, I agreed, but you're making better choices now. That's what matters. When we got back from Goodwill, Vanessa was sitting at the kitchen table with a serious look on her face. My first thought was that something bad had happened. Everything okay? I asked. She nodded. I've been thinking about our anniversary next month. Our 15th was coming up. In the past, we'd done big trips or expensive gifts. Last year, we'd gone to Cancun for a week. What about it? I asked cautiously. I think we should do something different this year. Something that reflects the changes we've been making. I sat down across from her. I'm listening. What if we put the money we'd usually spend on a trip into Chloe's college fund instead? We could still do a nice dinner or something, but she trailed off, looking uncertain. I reached across the table and took her hand. I think that's a great idea. The relief on her face was obvious. Really? You're not disappointed? Not at all. I think it's perfect. That night, we told Chloe about our decision. I expected her to be indifferent. Why would she care about our anniversary plans? But she surprised us again. That's really nice, she said. But you guys should still do something special. You work hard. Vanessa and I exchanged glances. We'll do a nice dinner, Vanessa assured her. Don't worry. Chloe nodded, then hesitated. Actually, what if I cook for you? Here at home. Like a fancy restaurant meal, but, you know, not as expensive. I tried to hide my shock. You want to cook us an anniversary dinner? Yeah, why not? I've been watching these cooking videos online. I could make something nice. We'd love that, Vanessa said quickly, before I could say anything stupid to ruin the moment. The night of our anniversary, Vanessa and I went for a walk around the neighborhood while Chloe prepared dinner. When we came back, the dining room had been transformed. The table was set with our good dishes, candles were lit, and soft music was playing. Go sit down, Chloe instructed. It's almost ready. We did as we were told, both of us a little stunned. A few minutes later, she brought out the food, some kind of pasta dish with shrimp that actually looked pretty impressive. This is amazing, Chloe, Vanessa said as we started eating. Thank you. It's really good, I agreed. And it was. Not restaurant quality maybe, but definitely better than I'd expected. Chloe beamed. I've been practicing at Madison's house. Her mom helped me figure out the recipe. After dinner, she brought out a small cake with Happy Anniversary written on it in slightly wobbly icing. Then she handed us each a card. I'm gonna go to Lexi's to study, she said. You guys should have some alone time. After she left, Vanessa and I opened our cards. Mine had a simple message. Dad, thanks for not giving up on me even when I was being the worst. Love, Chloe. I looked up to see Vanessa wiping away tears as she read her own card. What does yours say? I asked. She handed it to me. Mom, sorry for being such a brat. Thanks for loving me anyway. I'm trying to be better. Love, Chloe. We sat there in silence for a moment, both a little overwhelmed. We did it, Vanessa said finally. We actually turned things around. We're still turning, I pointed out. It's a process. But yeah, we're getting there. The college visit started a few weeks later. We did 3 campuses in one weekend. A lot of driving, a lot of walking tours, a lot of information to process. Chloe took notes at each stop, asking thoughtful questions about internship opportunities and journalism programs. On the drive home from the last campus, she was quiet, staring out the window at the passing scenery. So what did you think? I asked. Any favorites? She nodded slowly. I liked the second one, State University. It felt right. It's also the most affordable, Vanessa pointed out from the back seat. Yeah, I know. That's part of why I like it. Chloe turned to look at me. I don't want you guys spending a fortune on tuition. I can get scholarships and work during summers. I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, fighting the urge to tell her not to worry about money. The old me would have insisted on paying for whatever school she wanted, no matter the cost. But that wasn't the lesson we were trying to teach anymore. We'll figure it out together, I said instead. There are lots of options. Senior year started, and with it came all the usual chaos. College applications, senior portraits, prom planning. Through it all, Chloe maintained her job at Sweet Scoops, kept her grades up, and continued to show small but significant signs of growth. There were still occasional flare-ups of the old entitled attitude, a fight about borrowing the car, a sulk when we said no to an expensive prom dress, but they were fewer and farther between, and they resolved more quickly. The acceptance letters started coming in spring. Chloe got into 3 of the 5 schools she applied to, including State University, her top choice. We celebrated with takeout and ice cream, a far cry from the elaborate celebrations we might have had in the past. As we sat around the kitchen table that night, Chloe suddenly said, I've been thinking about something. What's that? Vanessa asked. Remember my red convertible? The one you guys got me for my 16th birthday? My stomach tightened. We hadn't talked about that car in over a year. What about it? I was such a jerk about that, she said, shaking her head. You guys spent all that money, and I acted like it wasn't good enough. Water under the bridge, I said quickly, not wanting to dredge up old hurts. No, but I've been thinking about it a lot lately. That was the moment, wasn't it? When everything started to change? Vanessa and I exchanged glances. I guess it was, I admitted. Chloe nodded. I'm glad it happened. Not the way it happened. I was awful, but I'm glad things changed. I like who I am now better than who I was then. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Me too, kiddo. Me too. The night before Chloe left for college, the 3 of us sat on the back porch watching the sunset. We'd spent the day packing her things into boxes and bags, getting ready for tomorrow's drive to State University. Nervous? I asked her. She nodded. A little, but excited too. You're going to do great, Vanessa assured her. I know, Chloe said, and there wasn't a trace of her old arrogance in it, just healthy confidence. I've got this. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky turn from blue to pink to purple. Then Chloe said something that caught me completely off guard. Thanks for not giving me your car that day. I turned to look at her. What? Your sedan. When I threw a fit about the convertible. Thanks for not giving in. I didn't know what to say. After all this time, all the changes we'd been through, she was bringing it back to that moment. You're welcome, I said finally. Though I didn't feel very wise at the time. She smiled. You were right though, about appreciating what I have instead of always wanting more. She looked out at our modest backyard, the old swing set we'd never gotten around to taking down, the flower beds Vanessa had planted years ago. I get it now. The next morning, we loaded up Vanessa's SUV with Chloe's things and headed for State University. The drive was filled with a mix of excited chatter and nervous silences. When we finally pulled up to her dorm, I felt a lump form in my throat. This was it. The moment every parent both dreads and looks forward to. The start of her adult life. We helped her move in, met her roommate, made up her bed with the new sheets we'd bought. All too soon, it was time for us to go. In the parking lot, Chloe hugged Vanessa first, both of them teary-eyed. Then she turned to me. Thanks, Dad, she said, wrapping her arms around me. For everything. I hugged her back, tight. I'm proud of you, Chloe. Not because of where you're going or what you're doing, just because of who you are. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. I'll call you guys tomorrow, okay? You better, Vanessa said, trying to smile through her tears. We watched her walk back toward her dorm, this young woman who had once been our spoiled little girl. Just before she reached the door, she turned and waved. On the drive home, Vanessa reached over and took my hand. We did good, she said. In the end, we did good. I squeezed her hand, thinking about the journey we'd been on, the mistakes, the hard lessons, the slow, sometimes painful growth. Yeah, I agreed. We did.